The Cleveland Browns are never far from controversy. Even when they stumble through a disastrous season, somehow the spotlight finds its way back to Cleveland. They always seem to be in the eye of the storm, whether it's drama in the front office, turmoil in the locker room, or endless debates on national television. And right now, the center of that storm is a young quarterback with a famous last name, a swagger that can't be ignored, and a growing legion of believers who see him as the future of the franchise. His name is Shedeur Sanders, and according to one of the most influential voices in Cleveland sports media, he is the reason the Browns remain relevant in the national conversation. That voice belongs to Mary Kay Cabot, a journalist who has spent years covering the highs and lows of this franchise, and who has now gone all in on Shedeur in a way that has fans buzzing, critics debating, and the Browns organization itself. Under enormous pressure, Mary Kay Cabot didn't just praise Shedeur Sanders, she went further, unleashing a wave of bold statements that felt like a direct challenge to the team's cautious handling of their new quarterback. Once known as a skeptic of Sanders, Cabot has flipped the narrative entirely. She now insists that without Shedeur, the Browns would be irrelevant after their humiliating 3-14 season. In her words, he is not only the reason Cleveland is still being talked about, but the only reason. It's a stunning reversal from someone who once raised questions about his hype, and it's a shift that reveals just how powerful Sanders' presence has become, both inside and outside the building. According to Cabot, the Browns stumbled into something too valuable to let go. They didn't just pick up a developmental quarterback, they picked up a spark, something that gave them visibility, conversation, and most importantly, hope. In her eyes, Shedeur is simply too talented to be brushed aside, and the Browns would be making a grave mistake if they tried to dim his shine. She urged the organization to give him a legitimate shot, declaring that even if things didn't pan out, the risk was still worth it, because at the end of the day, the value he brings, both on the field and off it, far outweighs what the team has invested. This isn't just a gamble, she argued, this is an opportunity they can't afford to miss. But Cabot didn't stop there. She pointed out something the Browns brass have been trying and failing to manage: the Shedeur Sanders effect. With a player like Shedeur, who comes pre-packaged with a fan base, social media buzz, and national media attention, you can't control the narrative. You can't push him to the side and hope the conversation dies down. If anything, the more the Browns try to downplay him, the louder the noise becomes. Cabot was blunt in her assessment. The organization's attempts to manage Sanders' fame have only backfired, creating more pressure, more criticism, and more attention than if they had simply embraced him from the start. In other words, the harder the Browns try to silence the Shedeur buzz, the more they get swallowed by it. And that's the heart of the dilemma. The Browns are a franchise that constantly insists it can block out the noise. They tell themselves they can handle the storm, that the outside world doesn't affect what happens on the inside. But with Shedeur Sanders, the storm doesn't just sit outside the building. It follows you into every room, every practice, every decision. And the truth, as Cabot highlighted, is that this storm isn't destructive, it's energizing. It's the kind of attention the Browns desperately need. What makes Cabot's argument even more compelling is the way she describes Shedeur not just as a quarterback, but as a person. She stressed that the Browns didn't sign him purely because of his fan base or highlight reels. They signed him because of the kind of man he is. Cabot herself witnessed this firsthand during her time around Sanders in Colorado and on the national stage. She saw him navigate red carpets, Radio Row at the Super Bowl, and major showcase events. And what struck her wasn't arrogance or entitlement. It was grace, charm, and authenticity. For her, Sanders carries an aura, a presence that makes people take notice without him having to say a word, and that's a quality you can't manufacture, a quality the Browns would be foolish to ignore. Cabot painted a picture of Shedeur as the complete package. Not only does he bring extraordinary arm strength and quick processing speed, traits she described as his superpowers, but he also brings a level of maturity and leadership rare for someone so young. She even highlighted his relationships with his teammates, particularly veteran quarterback Joe Flacco, noting how often the two are seen laughing and enjoying their time together. Inside the building, she said, Sanders has been nothing but positive, winning respect rather than demanding it. The real tension doesn't come from him. It comes from the tidal wave of support outside the building, the fans who won't let the organization bury his talent or delay his rise. That fan support is key. Cabot was careful to point out that Sanders himself has never been the one to stir controversy. He hasn't complained, hasn't demanded special treatment, and hasn't fed the media circus. Instead, it's his fans who have been relentless in ensuring he gets a fair shake. They've made it clear they won't accept him being sidelined, and their collective voice is forcing the Browns into the spotlight whether they like it or not. The irony is that Sanders himself has been quietly putting in the work, letting his performance speak louder than any headline, and it's that performance, Cabot argues, that's starting to silence the doubters. She recalled moments from training camp where Sanders didn't just hold his own, but excelled, earning first-team reps not because of hype, but because of hard work and sharp execution. In one instance, he went 2 for 3 in a session against some of the league's best defenders, finishing strong and leaving coaches impressed. For Cabot, this wasn't about media pressure, it was about Sanders proving in real time that he belongs. His rise wasn't gifted, it was earned. What makes this all the more dramatic is Cabot's own history with Sanders. Once one of his harshest critics, she has now become one of his loudest supporters. The shift is staggering. She no longer talks about him as a project or a risk, but as the future face of the Browns. She has praised his work ethic, his leadership, his maturity, and his undeniable impact in the locker room. She has acknowledged that he's already earned the respect of his teammates, a feat many quarterbacks never achieve, let alone this early in their careers. For Cabot, Sanders has gone from question mark to exclamation point, and she isn't afraid to say it publicly. This transformation in perspective matters because Mary Kay Cabot isn't just any journalist. Her voice carries weight in Cleveland. Fans listen, the team listens, and when she shifts from doubt to belief, it changes the conversation in a way few others can. Her endorsement of Sanders feels less like a casual opinion and more like a statement of fact. Shedeur Sanders is the future, and the Browns ignore that at their peril. The narrative surrounding Shedeur Sanders is no longer about hype versus reality. It's about inevitability. His arm strength, his processing speed, his composure under pressure, they all point to someone who can command an NFL offense. But what truly sets him apart, as Cabot emphasized, is the intangible. His ability to lead, his maturity beyond his years, his aura that elevates the room. Those are the qualities that make teammates rally, that make fans believe, and that make franchises shift their course. The Cleveland Browns are staring at a crossroads. They can cling to the past, try to control the uncontrollable, and risk alienating the one thing that's keeping them relevant. Or they can embrace the storm, lean into the energy, and let Shedeur Sanders take the wheel. Mary Kay Cabot has made her choice clear. For her, the time is coming, and the Browns better be ready when it does, because this isn't just about one player. It's about a city that's been starved for hope, a franchise that has endured ridicule, and a fan base that deserves something to believe in. Shedeur Sanders represents more than a quarterback battle. He represents a turning point, and the fact that even his former critics are now standing in his corner tells you everything you need to know. The tide is shifting in Cleveland, and Shedeur Sanders is at the center of it. So now the question becomes, what do you think? Has Shedeur Sanders done enough to silence the doubters and earn that starting spot? Do you agree with Mary Kay Cabot's dramatic shift in perspective, or do you believe he still has more to prove before he can be handed the reins? Can his leadership, maturity, and undeniable presence in the locker room outweigh the experience of veterans like Joe Flacco, or will the Browns continue to slow play his rise? And perhaps most importantly, how much impact do you think the fans, the loud, passionate, relentless fans, will have on the Browns' decision-making process going forward? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest stories shaking the NFL. Because as this saga proves, the drama in Cleveland is just getting started, and Shedeur Sanders might just be the storm that changes everything.